some ways, at some point in your life, everybody can be a lost rider. Good morning and welcome to this weekend's edition of News from the Camp House, listening post of the Texas Sportsman Association. This is Herman Brune, and this week's edition is also brought to us by the Shaw's Bend Social Club, the country club for folks who don't have a country club. All right, now we have a special guest with us this weekend. This is our state veterinarian, and he is also the executive director of the Texas Animal Health Commission, Dr. Dinges. How are you doing, Doc?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Man, it's like I always say, I was trying to make everybody happy, but it's just, how that goes.
You bet.
It's never ending, and it's job security. So, anyway, we're here today to get an update on screwworms. What's going on with the screwworm situation, and in the horrible event that they ever get across the Rio Grande, what are people supposed to do? So that's I'm gonna let you elaborate. Where are we at today?
You bet. So as of right now, USDA is reporting 13,234 total cases, animal cases in Mexico. They're considered 492 cases what they consider active in animals, and then I think presently there are like 110 human cases in Mexico being reported as of January the 9th. So we've kind of been watching the screwworms kind of migrate north from Panama there in the Darien Gap since we've been kind of keeping an eye on it. Well, we have been keeping an eye on it since March of 2024, and they moved their way up through Central America there. Made it to Guatemala by Halloween of 2024, and then week before Thanksgiving, they were reported in Mexico there in the southern state. So. It's something we've been keeping an eye on for quite some time. They were eradicated from the U.S. in 1966. They were pushed back down into Mexico. We did have outbreaks in Texas in 72. I think we had almost 91,000 cases here in Texas.
Really?
Being reported, and affected all but about 10 southeast states in the state at that time. So
I'll be damned.
And they really weren't doing much as far as animal control goes back then. At that time, we had a production facility that produced 200 million sterile flies at our southern border there at the Moore Air Base down there at Mission. And so they were relying heavily on the sterile insect technique and the use of those sterile flies to eradicate the New World screwworm fly. So,
right.
Like I said, back then they weren't paying much, or they weren't doing a whole lot to control animal movement. They would send, the Animal Health Commission would send inspectors out, inspect the animals, verify that those were New World screwworms, and they would basically put a 30-foot by 30-foot X on the ground with chalk or lime, if you will, and that way, when the plane would fly over, they could drop the New World screwworm sterile flies on that premises. Yes, sir. So,
all right. But now, but at the same, we have always, when it came to having beef or anything like that, horses or anything moving between Texas and Mexico, there's always been a quarantine period.
You bet. There are regulations and rules that have to be followed for animals coming out of Mexico. And then, obviously animals going into Mexico have to have, certain regulatory diseases tested and so on and so forth. So, our borders have been shut down for import of Mexican cattle Since November of 24, they opened them back up in February. They remained open up until about the first part of May of 2025, and then they shut them back down just due to some northern discoveries of cases in Mexico. And then they've remained closed since then. They tried to open them back up for a day in July, and they found some more northernmost cases. And the northernmost case right now that we've had a couple of 3 cases in Nuevo Leon, which were about 70 miles from the southern border there. We do have cases that are creeping up into Tamaulipas. I think they report 8 cases as of last week there in Tamaulipas. What's of concern there is that a few of those cases are in basically week-old animals, which would kind of lead to potentially the development of a adult fly population in that area. We don't have confirmation of that yet. USDA is still looking into the movement of those animals and kind of doing the investigation on those cases there in southern Tamaulipas.
All right, so they're showing up in baby calves in Tamaulipas.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, yeah, and the quarantine is all fine and good, but that don't stop flies. And yeah, so 70 miles. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so those cases that were 70 miles south of the U.S. border were tied to animals that had been moved from southern states. So those were based on movement. USDA has done trapping of flies in and around that area for 3 life cycles, almost 90 days.
Okay.
And there haven't been any adult fly populations or adult flies trapped in those surveillance traps. So they feel pretty confident that there's not a sterile or not a adult fly population of New World screwworm flies in those states there in Nuevo Leon.
All right. Is there anything, any kind of regulations, any kind of restrictions, any kind of stop guards going on down there?
So you bet. And in Mexico, the USDA has been really involved with this. Our new administration that took over in January of last year. Secretary Rollins has been instrumental in trying to kind of get the Mexican government to toe the mark and walk the line there, if you will. They did, put in place a New World Screwworm Action Agreement back in August of this year. USDA sends teams down into Mexico looking at animal movements, their surveillance, their treatment protocols, and so on and so forth. So the USDA has been pretty actively involved in that in the last 8 to 12 months. These flies have not the natural movement of the flies wouldn't have probably allowed them to move up from Panama as quick as they did. Probably the movement of the fly was due to infested animals that moved up through Central America. The fly is not going to. Normally, it's not. A given day, it's not going to travel more than 6 to 12 miles. If there are, obviously susceptible hosts in the area, they're not going to travel over about 2 miles in a day. So.
Okay.
But the movement from Central America has definitely been on infested animals, and
I got a dumb question. If these things came up from Central America or Panama down, below Guatemala and all that, how in the hell do those people live with these things?
Well, there are quite a few. So we have a production facility there in Panama that produces the sterile flies, and the cases are really multiplying in those Central American countries right now because there aren't being any sterile flies dropped in those areas. So it's kind of like a dam. The USDA has moved the dispersal polygon of those flies further north into Mexico, so the water's building up, so to speak, further south. So the problem is we don't have enough sterile flies, or we don't have the sterile fly production to eradicate them and push them back down south in the Panama. Back in the 70s and into the 80s, we had a production facilities, like I mentioned before, that produced 200 million sterile flies a week here in South Texas. Back in the 90s or the 80s, I guess, in 70s, that they had a production facility of 500 million sterile flies a week in Mexico that the U.S. was instrumental in helping to get built and open up. But there is a sterile fly production facility. There's a sterile fruit fly production facility in Mexico that the USDA helped with like $21 million to the Mexican government to help convert that into a sterile new rural screwworm fly production facility.
Mm-hmm.
That plant should come online in July of this year, June or July of this year, and it may be a couple of months to establish a fly brood, but they're hoping to eventually produce 100 million sterile flies from that plant in Mexico. So that will be 200 million sterile flies that we have at our disposal to disperse and hopefully stop the northern progression of these wild type flies.
Okay. All right, I tell you what, let's take a quick break and thank the folks who let us come on here every Saturday morning. We'll be right back.